On Election Day, nearly half of all polling locations had problems with tabulating machines and printers. Malfunctioning tabulation machines forced voters to wait in line for hours to exercise their sacred right to vote. Our election officials failed us miserably. Tens of thousands of Maricopa County voters were disenfranchised. And we are exploring every avenue to correct the many wrongs that have been done this past week.
Hey, how you doing, my good friends? I hope all is going well. I am back to the correct side of the table, so I'm happy to say that. And Merry Christmas. We got Christmas next week. It's coming up fast. I can't believe it. We're already in the year 2023. Now, keep in mind, when I was a kid, I remember like all of us would think, wow, what's the year 2010 going to be like? And there's going to be flying cars everywhere and blah, blah, blah. Now 2010 is history, right? Anyway, okay. So today, before we start, run it by my lawyer. I did have a client that hired me, run it by my lawyer several months ago. And what happened to this poor guy is on a Thursday afternoon, he was just walking down the boardwalk, okay, here in San Diego. And you know those jerks that rent, those Segways and electronic scooters and all that. So this guy that had a Segway, the Segway is one of those like, those stupid things. No, it looks kind of fun, I guess. But he hit our guy, our client named Glenn. I call him Double N Glenn, all right? Because Double N Glenn, I kept getting confused if he has one N or two. So Double N Glenn. So he hits Double N Glenn right there on the boardwalk, and this poor guy busted his knee. I mean, it was really bad. And then the jerk on the Segway just went off. I want to make a video skit like this guy on this slow Segway hits him and he breaks his knee, and then by running off he just kind of takes the Segway and keeps going because there was like all these people that were helping him on the sidewalk, our client. And here's from the legal standpoint, I mean, it was very, I mean, a broken knee, right? And he had to have a surgery. It's going to hurt for a long time. He was, he couldn't go to work for like 4 weeks, and he works from home, and he couldn't even work for a few weeks because of the pain and whatnot. And the issue in his whole case was the insurance company. He has his own insurance, and it's called, the underinsured policy. But the problem was that it's only triggered if a vehicle hits him and runs. All right. So if it was like a jogger that hit him and ran off, that wouldn't count because the jogger's not a vehicle. If it was a car, on the freeway or something, obviously that would count. The gray area, it was the stupid Segway that hit him. And it just so happened, after we got the farmer's policy and read through it and did a lot of research and legal research and blah, 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 we convinced the insurance company that the Segway qualifies as a vehicle under the policy. So congrats, Double N. Okay. So that was an interesting case. It took several months, which is very fast in the legal standpoint. Some of these cases take years, right? Okay. Today's case, you're going to love it. We're talking election fraud allegations and obviously election fraud and how elections are tabulated and whatnot. It's a very important topic, right? We almost had a revolution over it. Okay, so here we go. We're in this particular case. We have the race for governor of Arizona, Kari Lake v. Katie Hobbs. Okay, and in this particular election, it was very narrow. The state of Arizona is very narrow, right? That's why it's, a lot of times a swing state. And she won, the Democrat candidate won, and then on November 8th of this year. And shortly thereafter, we have this big lawsuit by the candidate that lost, Kari Lake, okay? And she files this lawsuit, and I think it's not as easy as saying, oh, she's crazy, or, Donald Trump's crazy, like throw it all out. Every single one of these lawsuits has to be analyzed and adjudicated, okay? And this particular lawsuits, I'll go over the merits of it and kind of how it will play out in the legal system and how the courts kind of adjudicate these election fraud cases. All right, and I will say by a good lawsuit. What I mean by that is that it's not going to be dismissed early on. It's not going to be something that's just like thrown out and kind of laughed at by the court or anything like that, because there are some issues here that are brought up that is a problem in every election. All right, so let's go over it now. So this was filed this month, December 9th. And the basic premise here is that there were a lot of problems with the November 2022 election for governor in Arizona, and in particular in Maricopa County, all right, where Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe, all of that, right? And the major reason here is that there was, in this complaint, the allegations are that the candidates and the government officials, they were involved in some things like they were weeding out some speech on different social media sites and reporting some speech as being incorrect speech, or invalid facts and whatnot. They were reporting it to the government. The government would report it to Twitter and Facebook and things like that. I think that one is not going to be that meritorious, and I'll go over that. Actually, I'll just say it right now, because I don't think they're going to be able to prove that those few things swayed the election. I don't think I don't think they're going to be able to prove that. Also, there is an obligation to, if they see something like obvious incorrect facts, like someone says, oh, the state of Arizona, they're getting paid extra money if this other candidate wins, blah, blah, blah. Like it would undermine the election if you don't point all those things out. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't think that one is going to be meritorious. That's why I kind of bring it up early. And now let's get to the gist of this. All right. What was alleged in here that could be a problem for the state of Arizona is that on the actual day of the election, there was a lot of chaos, so to speak. They use that word chaos. There was a lot of, it was a little bit of disorganization. There was some sites that they had to print ballots, and sure enough, the printers weren't working and things like that. And then, so that will be something in the lawsuit that we're going to go over. Also, there was problems with, how they kind of counted votes, and they brought up good points here about where the actual ballots were being transferred. All right, meaning when somebody goes to the polls and votes and whatnot, how it goes through the system. All right. And then one thing that I think is important, and it's going to be a subject of a lot of litigation, is this whole signature verification process. Okay. Because you have people here that have to look at signatures and try to determine if they're real signatures, from the actual person, or if they're, forged. Because if they think it's forged, then there's another process where they have to then send that ballot back to the person, and then the person has to re-sign it to re-verify it, basically. So clearly, that's always going to be challenged, and you'll see kind of how that's going to play out. Now, we're going to talk about all of these important things as soon as we go to this commercial. No, just kidding. We don't have any commercials here. Right? No, we're going to talk about all these important things after we talk about the most important one, jurisdiction. Okay? So this lawsuit was filed in Maricopa County, Arizona, in the state court. Now, the interesting part about jurisdiction, it is a proper venue for jurisdiction. I think they could have I'm positive they could have brought it in the federal court in Arizona, because they're alleging various federal laws. So they could bring it in Arizona because Arizona is a state, the government of Arizona, being Maricopa County, is in Arizona. So you have personal jurisdiction over Arizona, and you could bring it in a federal court if you're alleging various violations of federal laws. Now, the losing candidate here brought it in the state court. I think the only thing I could think of why they would bring in the state court is probably because the federal judges are so bent out of shape and pissed off and annoyed about all of the election lawsuits, especially in Arizona after the 2020 federal election. So I think they're like, okay, we're just going to, we have a better shot in the state court where, not as many lawsuits were going on about the election than we do in the federal court. That's the only thing I can think of in terms of jurisdiction. Okay, so now let's talk about that. Now that we know that the jurisdiction is proper here, let's talk about the merits of this case. And the first order of business I'm going to say is that our election system in this country has to freaking change, okay? Because it's just, there's too many avenues for, I think, not necessarily fraud, but there's just too many avenues where people could say, this could be fraudulent, or this could be, if not fraudulent, it could be, it could result in some sort of errors, okay? All right, so let's get right to it. Let's get to the nitty gritty, my friends. The candidate sued the state of Arizona. When I say state of Arizona, the county is a entity of the state. So, the sued Maricopa County. Then she also sued the candidate that won. So Kari Lake's lawyers decided to sue Katie Hobbs, which I thought was interesting. And then taking it one step further, they sued her as a candidate, which is one thing. Okay, that's fine in her official capacity. Then they sued her personally as well. I've gone over this a few times. I always think it's a mistake. If you're going to, not always, I guess, sometimes I guess it would be an okay thing to do. But when you sue somebody personally who works for the government, it's a tricky thing because what they're trying to do is they're trying to take her personal assets, which I think is going to be difficult because in every government code, it says if somebody's working in their capacity for the government, even if they screw up, you can't sue them personally. The only time you could sue a government official personally is if, whatever, it's a Saturday night, they're not working, they're going to a restaurant or something, they're driving home and they rear end you. Or if, Joe Biden is on a Segway and he's like cruising along the boardwalk and he runs into you, when he's on vacation or something, then maybe you could sue him personally. All right, you might have to wait till after he's the president to have the lawsuit move forward. But those are the only times that you could basically sue an individual personally. So I think that one is a big mistake. But let's go on now to the crux of this lawsuit. Okay. All right. The first thing we're going to talk about is this whole signature process. Okay. We have here, 2.5 million votes almost. And the margin that Katie Hobbs won was 17,000. All right. Which is a very, very small amount in terms, when you get the sense of the whole amount of people voting. And now we come to this thing about signatures, okay? All of these ballots were signed, right? And now the way it works in Arizona, and this is the same in most states, okay? The ballots are coming in, and then you have somebody that looks at the signatures, all right? And then they'll look at the signature on the registration, wherever that person registered to vote, and then they look at the signature on the ballot, and they have to make sure the signatures match, okay? Now, when the signatures match, right, the first level, they call it the first level person, they just kind of like let it through. If it doesn't match, then it goes to kind of like a higher level, okay? And then a lot of these ones that do match, they get kind of like audited by somebody else, like little by little, just to like a quality control or whatever. The signatures that don't match then go to a different person. That other person on the higher level, he or she could look at it and then decide, oh, the first level is correct, this doesn't match. Or they could say, no, it looks good enough, right? Let it through. And clearly here you have a lot of these poll workers who are basically making big decisions, you could say, over this. And, so that's what the second level person, if that second level person thinks it's bad, the way it was done here is that then it could go to a, one last step. All right. And then one last step, that person could then, send it through or say that it was rejected. Now, it's kind of in the state of California, and it's similar as in the state of Arizona. You have here these workers are not experts in signatures. They are not these forensics experts. You know, I've had some legal cases where it was a big deal in terms of like who signed something, and we would have to get these signature experts. And God, for some reason, it's escaping my what they're called. But anyway, there's these various forensics experts, and they would outline kind of like how you could tell if a signature is forged and whatnot. And we have here these poll workers that are not, that level of expertise. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because it could, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily the case that, it would be hard to prove that all these workers are, conspiring or, they're acting fraudulently or whatnot. So I think that level of proof will be tough. But I do think that there could be some good points to be made in the sense that, well, maybe they're missing some of these, and which is why it's like, why the heck can't we have a better system where we don't have to have people, eyeing this and then, kind of using their own discretion. So anyway, it's kind of interesting when I looked up how they, what they are trained a little bit. And these are this is the state of California, and it's similar with the state of Arizona in terms of how they train these folks to look for. So here's some of the things. I just thought these were interesting. You want to look at the slant of the signature, right? So, if someone signs it straight through or it kind of goes up or goes down, that's one thing. Are they printing the signature or is it in cursive? The size, proportion, scale. And then my favorite one is these individual characteristics. So they train these folks to look at, are the T's crossed and the I's dotted? Are loops? There's important letters that you always want to look for loops in terms of how someone's signing it. And those letters are F, G, J, Y, and Z. So if you look at those letters, you want to see how it's kind of written and if there's a certain loop in a certain way. Spacing between letters within the first and last name. Letter formations, proportion or ratio of letters in the signature, initial strokes and connecting strokes, similar endings such as an abrupt end, a long tail, or a loop back around. Mine is an abrupt end. What's yours? Abrupt end or loop around? These guys are loop arounders? Okay. Don't take that the wrong way. I don't know. It's just how they sign their name. Okay. The speed of writing, presence or absence of pen lifts. So gosh, it's kind of weird. It's not like this is the poll workers, and obviously even myself, like if I'm in a rush or something, I'll sign my name differently, right? And sometimes if I just feel weird, I'll print it and I don't know why. And for credit cards, when I like sign something and I'm just bored, I'll just say like something, goofy, like subscribe to Run By My Lawyer. No, okay, I'm gonna start signing that way. Hey, please subscribe. People are gonna be like, what the hell is this signature doing here? Okay. So anyway, so these poll workers are, like I said, they're not trained except for, they are trained. They're just not, forensics experts. Also, they're looking at things like evidence of trembling or shaking in the signature could be health related. The voter may have used a diminutive of their legal name, including but not limited to initials. Oh, here they're saying, so even if the signatures are different, it could be that if the first signature you're looking at was years ago and the current signature is different, you could use that to take into account. The voter signature style may have changed over time. How the heck is a poll worker going to know that? They're counting potentially 20,000 votes a day, right? And then they're going to look at vote number 12,118 and say, you know what? Why did, maybe Joe Samo just started changing the way he signed things. He really needs subscribers or something because he just changed the way he signed it. How are they going to know that? A signature in the voter's registration file may have been written with a stylus pen or other electronic signature tool. God, what? Okay. That's another thing. Sometimes I get these documents I have to sign online, and then I have to sign it, moving the mouse pad. You guys ever get that? You have to sign. It's like, what the heck is this? I look like I'm, drawing like a baby, like just putting something out there. So if they use that one as kind of the reference signature, I'm screwed. I don't even know how I signed it that day, And sometimes I just put a little like an oval, oblong formation there, just to look cool. Okay, so the reason why I am going over all of this in excruciating detail is because, like I said, I think this lawsuit has a point in the sense that how can we trust these poll workers even if they're acting with the best of intentions, right? How can we trust they're going to be competent? How are we going to trust they're going to make the right decision all the time, Because an error of 1% is a big error, especially if the election comes down to less than 1%, right? You with me? Everyone with me? We're all on the same page here, right? So then, gotta love technology. There is actual signature verification technology now. And that signature verification technology, like it sounds, it will take these signatures and there's an a computerized system of doing this. By the way, this was also, God, when Kobe Bryant passed away, right? One of the best basketball players, the best being Michael Jordan, no doubt. Okay, but anyway, when Kobe Bryant passed away, there were all of these like jerseys and everything going on sale with Kobe Bryant's signature. So all of a sudden, everyone started becoming in the sports world or sports memorabilia world started trying to figure out what does Kobe's signature look like, So anyway, and then there's these entities that verify sports memorabilia, and they use this technology to try to figure out which signatures are forged and which ones are not. Now, in that world, we obviously have some people that are clearly going to have bad intentions, right? But the point I'm making is, I think even poll workers with good intentions, like I said, and then this whole thing with this signature verification technology, we're always going to have lawsuits over that because, as you could see, how the hell do they know this and how accurate is it? All right, so there's a couple. Okay, let's see. Look at the Arizona. Oh, the state of Arizona's regulations and training was actually kind of cool. If you look here, they actually have examples, right? Remember what I was saying in the state of California, what to look for. Here's some examples. Here's the genuine signature of John Doe, and there's the question signature. You see how it's all different, but that's kind of an easy example there. And then you have here some other kind of examples about the, what signatures will match and which ones will not. All right. So anyway, my favorite part about this and the reason why I have it. And if you, send me an email or my info in the comments, you could even take this fun test where it says, let's see if you could find the forged signatures and which ones are not. They have a test that these folks have to take before they become. So this is the test. Like on the left column, those are the genuine signatures. And then after it, you have to match which one's the correct one and which one is the forged one. So I thought it was pretty interesting. So anyway, that was excruciating, wasn't it? Like that. I mean, are these guys still? Oh, they're still there. Sweet. Phew. I hope you folks are still there, right? No. And God, this is going to be an issue of debate in this particular case. And I think we have to come up with a way that we don't have poll workers have to do this, all right? Because, for these obvious reasons. So this particular lawsuit makes it a big point of that issue. Now, we'll go on with the other issues that they brought up. So they brought up this issue about these there are all of these different ways that people were voting. Some people voted, in person on election day. Some people voted in person before election day because the state of Arizona had this kind of this process where you can go early and vote in person. Some people voted, via ballots, right? Some people went to the wrong place to vote, and some of it was because one place wasn't working correctly, so they had to send everyone to other places. And so some people had to vote with the poll they had to print a ballot. Okay, so it's kind of like they call it on-demand ballot, right? And then what they said in here, and they had a good point, is that sometimes what happens when you have a printer and you have to print something very important, right? Remember that movie Office Space? The guy's like yelling, PC load letter, what is that, right? They were having some problems in some places with the freaking printers. And so that caused some problems too. And then other people voted with in-ballot, right? In-ballot, in-mail ballots. Mail-in ballots, right? So some people were using mail-in ballots to cast their votes. And so what this lawsuit says is, well, what happened was that when you have all of these different like agencies of voting, there was some problems, and I think they're correct in the sense that, the state of Arizona did not do it perfectly. There were some errors in the chain of custody, it's called. Chain of custody means, where the ballot was going and who handled it at all times. So what they pointed out in some situations is like, okay, they would drop it off at the mail. Even the mail-in ballots, you could drop it off in the United States Postal Service, or you could drop it off at these like different ballot boxes around the state, like at like libraries and churches or whatever. I don't know if churches would have one of those, but some places would have it. Okay, so this lawsuit made it a good point of showing the chain of custody was a little bit odd. Like it didn't work exactly right. There was like procedures that they have to like take it from the post office, then take it to this official site, or the courier had to go from here to there. And then to make it even more complicated, some of the ballots had to go to this private company called Runbeck Elections that the state of Arizona contracts with. And what that company then does is that they take the ballots and they scan all of them so that later when you have the ballot workers and whatnot, instead of looking at actual paper and they would just look on the screen and see the ballots digitally, right? So that company had to get those ballots and then put it in the screen. So the chain of custody issues were very weird. And then they had this beautiful declaration from one person that worked there. And that one person said, and I believe it to be true, because I could see it happening. And they said something like, well, some of the people that worked at that company, they just brought in ballots of like their family members or friends. And then they just like put that ballot in there. Okay. Now, the reason why that's weird is because that wasn't one of the ways that the mail-in ballots were allowed to be distributed, right? It had to go through the postal service or an official ballot box. So when they gave it to their buddy and their buddy worked at this place and then they just brought in the ballot that way, in theory, it just wasn't done correctly. Do you see what I'm saying? So that brought up another issue. So I do think that they have a point with this chain of custody with the ballots. And I think that I don't think that the court is going to rule that there was like fraud in the way that it was done. But I do think they're going to rule that, yeah, it could have been a problem, right? It's which if you have enough of those could have been a problem, then you may have enough to overturn the election. Do you see what I'm saying? But you have to have a lot. So I do think they do have a point that could be a problem. All right, let's go on to their next one. They were having printer issues. Out of 223 sites, it was about 130 of them were having printer issues, which means 60% of them. So 60% of the ballot places were having some problems printing out certain things. And then they kind of go over like the statistics of it. And then some of the places, it was a very well drafted lawsuit, I will say. And they took a lot of good care in terms of this. But listen to this quote by one of the officials. The printer technicians identified a potential solution to the breakdown to adjust printer settings, confirm successful print and tabulation at one site. And the other technicians at this other site mid-afternoon began finally fixing the problem, or no longer having that issue. So now you have these printer technicians that are going from site to site to try to fix this. Again, that is a potential problem. I don't think with the law, with evidence, I remember one of my evidence professors at Berkeley Law School used to say, every evidence is like a little tiny brick. You need to build a wall with those bricks. Okay, so if you only have one little piece of evidence, you're screwed. If you have a lot of bricks, maybe you get the wall, okay? Or if you have one big, huge granite, like 100 by 100 size, right? Then you got your wall. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that one with the printer issues, I do think it's a small brick in their case. We keep going on. One of the things that I thought was very, very funny. What do I mean by funny? Ironic? Got my friend Ritesh. He always tells me, make sure you don't mix up ironic with coincidence. Like something could be a coincidence, but it's not ironic, and funny could be either. Okay, so anyway, who won? Katie Hobbs. What did Katie Hobbs do for a living? She was the Secretary of State of Arizona, which means she's the one that oversees the election. And then she's the one that won the election. She's the one that certified the election. In law, we call that conflict of interest, right? This happens in elections where the Secretary of State for the state, or for a county or something, will then run for, mayor of a city, or they'll run for, in this case, governor of Arizona. And then you have, and then it's Republicans have done it, Democrats have done it, independent candidates have done it. So it's not like it's never been done. It's happened a lot. But there is a conflict of interest. In law, a conflict of interest kind of creates a presumption that somebody screwed up, or that somebody at least has a conflict to want to screw up or to act biasly in their favor. But it doesn't do the whole trick, right? So they still have to prove that she did something wrong in terms of how she oversaw the election that she won. I think one thing that we could do to help fix election fraud concerns is, from now on, if a Secretary of State runs for office, then let's just have somebody else, damn it, oversee that election, right? It's like, why not? At least we eliminate that particular issue, right? Geez, okay. Like, why? I don't know why the state of Arizona didn't think about that in advance. Probably because, like I said, it's happened before and blah, 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 right? Okay. Next order of business is they complained in this complaint with a wait times. And they did a very good job in getting evidence about various wait time problems. Some of those problems were because the aforementioned printer problems, and then they would have to send people to different polling sites. And then this one I couldn't believe. This was very bad, okay? There was 2 sites that were completely closed, okay? To further prove the unreliability of Maricopa County data, it was the Black Mountain Baptist Church. Black Mountain is an area in Phoenix, okay? And Cave Creek Town Hall were 2 vote centers in which all the on-site tabulators were not operational for a significant part of the election day. These 2 centers turned away voters and directed potential voters to vote centers nearby, okay? So what happened was those other voting centers just they had too many voters, right? So there was more wait time. In this lawsuit, then she, her lawyers, they got witnesses that said, I waited this 2 hours here and I waited 2 hours there, and they have a lot of witnesses that said that, okay, and they even have 2 official inspectors that said, that yes, in these, the Church of Jesus Christ, LDS, in the Southern community had a 2-hour wait period, and Desert Hills Community Church had a 2-hour wait period. Apparently in Arizona, actually it's in most places, a lot of voting happens at churches. Okay, so now, so the next order of business. Now, as I said from the outset, where does this go? So the election was in November 2020. the certification happened in early December. It was about 3 weeks later. And then the lawsuit was a week later, okay? I could guarantee a lot of lawyers are going to make a lot of money. No, I joke when I say that. It's actually true, but I joke like, it's not that it's a good thing. But anyway, this particular lawsuit, I think this is how it's going to go down. Kari Lake wants either the court to rule that she's the winner. Okay, 0% chance of that. The court will not do that. Okay, she will not win that. The next thing she wants is for the court to rule that we need to have for Maricopa County. Okay, the lawsuit is weird. Well, Maricopa County is like half of the voters or 60% of the voters of Arizona. So they're just challenging how it was conducted in that county. The next thing, if the court is not going to declare she's the winner, then the next thing is that they want the court to rule that we need to have a new election in Maricopa County. Obviously, that's very costly. That's very timely. And then the other problem is it's going to be done the same way, right? Because we haven't set a new freaking election system. Okay, so it's going to be done the same way. I don't think she'll even win that, all right? Because I think that she has a point, like I said about the little bricks here and there. She has a point that there's some things that are unreliable, especially with the freaking signatures. All right. But I just don't think it's enough for her to convince the judge to redo the whole election. The thing with the signatures, I think for the most part, it's pretty clear they probably get it right. Maybe there's like what do you guys say? Maybe one out of a couple hundred are wrong or whatever. Maybe they send it back to the person doesn't sign it on time and blah, blah, blah. I think this is how the judge is going to reason it. There's no evidence of some sort of bias with the poll workers or some sort of fraud with the poll workers or anything like that. So I think that they're not going to win. They're not going to get a new election. I don't see that happening either. So I think the plaintiff here is going to lose on everything in terms of the lawsuit. She's definitely not going to get the personal liability of the victor, right? Like, I don't know how that will be thrown out, laughably. Okay. But there is something important here that will change. And I think that some of the things that will change is kind of like how they have to figure this out, like in terms of the chain of custody, in terms of the signature verification. They're gonna have to come up with ways that we have more reliability and less kind of situations where someone could say, hey, look at that. That's not a reliable way of doing it. Look at that. Why do we have printers breaking? Why do we have signatures, people disagreeing on what's the proper signature? I do think that there is an important conversation there that every state is going to have because of lawsuits like this, and kind of like, how can we make elections more reliable and whatnot. All right. As always, I love hearing from you folks. If you have a different take on this lawsuit, like, throw it in the comments, call me, email me. All the info is in the comments. My contact info. I love hearing from you folks. And as always,